Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in just the dizzying, kinetic world of Hong Kong cinema.
It's an incredible story. I mean, we're talking about a film industry that, for a while, was the third largest producer in the entire world.
And often outselling Hollywood in major international markets, which is just staggering to think about.
And if you really want to get Hong Kong cinema, you first have to understand Hong Kong itself.
Yeah.
The culture, the films, they're completely inseparable from its unique history.
As a crown colony, right? With these deep Chinese roots, but also this rapidly changing identity, especially leading up to the 1997 handover.
Exactly. It's tension.
Yeah, the sources capture that feeling immediately. They open with the legendary director Wong Kar-wei.
Ah, yeah.
He was talking about moving from Shanghai to Hong Kong when he was 5, and he said he was, and I'm quoting here, totally alienated.
He said he developed an intense feeling for geographical upheavals.
That's it. And that feeling, that alienation, the displacement, a city just constantly shifting under your feet, that's really the heart of our deep dive today.
So that's our mission, really. We're going to try and map this triangulated relationship.
Between what? The real city.
The real concrete city of Hong Kong, the film industry that it created, and then the imaginary version of the city it built on screen.
We'll trace it all the way from the 1920s through the new wave, right? And look at that shift from, say, traditional Chinese diaspora stories to something totally different.
Hyper-modern, transnational urbanism. It's quite a journey.
Okay, so let's start with that history, because Hong Kong's rise as a film powerhouse is really a story about political chaos happening somewhere else.
That's the key. Its culture was just fundamentally shaped by this constant heavy immigration from mainland China.
But it wasn't just a general influx. The sources say the film industry's expansion was a direct result of very specific political decrees in China. It was an accidental magnet for filmmakers.
And this is the part I find fascinating. Two huge groups of refugee filmmakers arrived for, believe it or not, opposite reasons.
Completely opposite political and linguistic reasons, which sounds impossible.
But it happened. So the first group, they were politically active Mandarin speakers. They fled Shanghai in 1937.
And they went to Hong Kong to specifically continue making anti-Japanese resistance films, but in a safer place.
Precisely. But at almost the exact same time, you had Cantonese film producers leaving the mainland.
Why were they leaving?
Because the nationalist government, the KMT, had just decreed that all films in mainland China had to be made in Mandarin.
Wait, hold on. So one group fled to Hong Kong to make politically charged Chinese cinema, and another group fled to Hong Kong to keep making films in their dialect, Cantonese, which the government had just banned.
Exactly. Hong Kong becomes this accidental safe harbor, a pressure cooker for two totally distinct film traditions, not to mention a huge amount of capital and talent.
And I imagine it was, from a business perspective, just easy to set up shop there.
Oh, incredibly easy. Free import of raw film, really cheap land to build massive studios, and, practically no regulations or taxes to worry about.
But the real industrial takeoff, the moment it becomes this global force, that comes a bit later, in the 1950s.
Yes, and this is where the entire economy of Hong Kong pivots. You have the post-1949 refugees providing all this skill and entrepreneurship.
But the real trigger was financial, right? It was the Western trade embargo on communist China.
That embargo is absolutely critical. It just completely destroyed Hong Kong's traditional role as an entrepot.
The main hub for importing and exporting goods into China.
That whole business model was gone overnight. The city desperately needed a new industry. And film production, with its low barrier to entry and this huge diaspora market waiting, it just stepped right in to fill the void.
And that's when the giants start to form. First and foremost, the Shaw brothers.
Monolithic. They dominated the industry right up until 1986. And the scale of their operation is, well, it's hard to even comprehend.
We're talking about a 46-acre complex called Movie Town.
A self-contained world. 10 studios running at the same time. 1,500 actors under contract. They even had their own drama school. It was an industrial factory for popular culture.
That sounds like a complete monopoly. How could anyone even compete with that?
Well, that's where Golden Harvest comes in.
Yeah.
They show up in the 1970s, founded by Raymond Chow, and they are the disruptors.
So what do they do differently?
Instead of that tight, controlling Shaw studio system, Golden Harvest focused on independence for its filmmakers and, critically, on the international market.
And that pivot was basically personified by one person.
Bruce Lee. Enter the Dragon alone grossed $100 million in the U.S.
And they did the same thing later with Jackie Chan. But then in the 80s, a new player arrives. Cinema City.
a totally different beast. This was three dynamic filmmakers with serious financial backing, and their whole focus was on these big-budget, high-speed, mixed-genre films.
They're the ones who brought that frenetic urban energy that defined the mid-'80s, right?
Yes, culminating in huge blockbusters like A Better Tomorrow in 1986.
So if we shift from the industry to the stories they were telling, it seems like the films were constantly wrestling with the city's identity.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The sources point out that in mainland Chinese literature and cinema, there was this long tradition of romanticizing the country as, innocent and pure.
And the city was seen as the opposite. Corrupt, manipulative, a place of moral decay.
So when you have all these refugees flooding into this hyper-capitalist city, that old ideological conflict just gets played out on screen.
And by the 50s, Hong Kong cinema was basically projecting three completely different contradictory images of itself at the same time.
Three different models, yeah.
It's fascinating.
Okay, what were these three narratives trying to say?
Well, first you had the negative model. These films depicted the poor living conditions, the selfishness of capitalism, the dark side of the urban rush.
And the second?
The utopian model. This one presented Hong Kong as lawful, dynamic, a place where justice prevails and hard work pays off. It was basically the cinematic justification for the economic miracle. So the dark side and the bright side. What was the third one?
The satirical comedy model. And these were about funny, sympathetic characters just trying to survive in this crazy commercial world, using their wit to get by.
So all three were competing to define the city for its own inhabitants.
It never really settled on one identity. It was a constant argument with itself.
Then we get to 1967, and there's major unrest inspired by the Cultural Revolution in the PRC. How did the government react to that?
They reacted by very intentionally trying to shift the population's identity away from the mainland.
How?
The government started promoting these aggressively modern, westernized images.
Yeah.
Things like the Hong Kong Festival, the Miss Hong Kong pageant.
So it was a conscious effort, cultural engineering, really, to get people to see themselves as citizens of a modern, international, and very distinct Hong Kong.
And you see this new balance of Chinese and Western values pour into the cinema.
That speed, that constant reinvention, it even affected how the films were made, didn't it?
Oh, completely. Hong Kong production was famous for its flexibility. It wasn't like the rigid Hollywood system where you have a finished script.
Right. Films would start with just an idea, and the script would sometimes get written on the day of shooting. Wong Kar-wei was famous for this.
And that improvisational, high-speed process directly created the narrative style. It led to those signature episodic narratives we see in so many of the films.
It makes sense. It reflects the urban experience. Chance encounters, disjointed experiences, that feeling of alienation.
The structure of the film literally mirrored the confusion of walking through a city that was changing every single day. It provided a kind of narrative logic for a place defined by transience.
Okay, so from that urban structure, we have to talk about the genre that put Hong Kong on the global map. Martial arts.
Which is a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It seems like one. Why would a genre that's all about mythical history and traditional codes dominate such a modern capitalist city?
Because it provided what the modern city couldn't. Martial arts cinema was a non-urban genre that used Chinese history to invent this mythical past, a sort of lost homeland.
The early swordplay films were all about Confucian codes, right? Master-pupil relationships, family ties.
They provided a sense of stability in a world that felt politically and culturally unstable.
And then in the 1970s, Bruce Lee arrives, and he is the perfect person to bridge that gap.
He's the moment that tradition smashes into global modernity. Here's a guy born in the U.S., returns to Hong Kong, becomes its most famous citizen, and celebrates a strong, unique Hong Kong identity.
And he basically killed off the old preachy Cantonese films.
He hastened their end, for sure. But his successor, Jackie Chan, represents a totally different kind of shift.
Lee was the Chinese diaspora. Chan is transnational urbanism.
That's the perfect way to put it. The industry, especially Golden Harvest, very carefully cultivated Jackie Chan to be a global commodity.
And his style was key to that, the kung fu comedy.
Right. It was this blend of incredible acrobatics and slapstick humor. Yeah. And he often played this naive, innocent character. It just made him so much more accessible to audiences everywhere.
His star power kind of diluted the specific cultural markers of Hong Kong so he could be understood universally.
It was a very pragmatic move. And that shift from Lee's intense traditional hero to Chan's witty, cynical, urban survivor that perfectly mirrored Hong Kong's own transformation into a modern capitalist society.
And of course, a huge part of his appeal was the stunts, the authenticity.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize his method.
Yep.
It would film every major stunt sequence in a single take, but with multiple cameras.
To prove it was real, no cuts, no tricks.
Exactly. But what cemented his global fame?
The outtakes.
Yeah.
The blooper reel at the end showing the stunts going wrong.
Yes. It brought vulnerability and humor back into these death-defying sequences. It made the hero human. It was this calculated piece of honesty that became his signature.
That mix of authenticity and urban pragmatism flows right into the great urban film waves of the 80s and 90s, where the city's anxieties really take center stage.
And we have to start with the hero's cycle, which basically kicks off with John Woo's A Better Tomorrow in 1986.
This was a hybrid genre, right?
Completely. It took a modern Hong Kong setting, mixed in the style of American gangster films, added just an insane amount of gun violence, but then laid this intense male melodrama over the top of it all.
And that melodrama about loyalty, about brotherhood, that was everything. These weren't just action movies.
Not at all. They were working through the collective anxiety of the 1997 handover. When your entire political identity is about to be erased, loyalty to your friends becomes the only thing left that feels absolute.
And visually, they defined urban cool.
The elegant coats, the sunglasses, the cigarettes. It's pure film noir aesthetics. And Wu would even use 70s jazz scores in films like Hard Boiled.
Which connected it back to the cult following Hong Kong action already had in, like, U.S. inner-city cinemas.
Exactly.
A great case study for this is Ringo Lam's City on Fire from '87. The sources say if Wu filmed his dreams of heroism.
Lam filmed his nightmares.
Yeah.
And his film is just relentless. It's about an undercover cop, played by Chow Yun-fat, who's trapped between his duty and his loyalty to the criminals he's infiltrated. The city itself is a cage.
And Lam's visual style, it's all about these transitional spaces. Grainy bars, hotel rooms, rainy streets, places where you're neither home nor safe.
The cinematography is just soaked in this melancholy. He uses these heavy blue tones, deep shadows, really pushing it into film noir to convey this sense of guilt and tragedy.
And the films often end with a tragic death, but then there's that double ending, right? A final memory of the character still alive, still dancing, which just emphasizes the loss.
And that intensity, that uncertainty, it leads us right into the new wave, to postmodern urbanism.
These were filmmakers from the post-war generation, often educated overseas, people like Anne Hui and, of course, Wong Kar-wei.
And they were trying to express this deep uncertainty about Hong Kong's future using these fragmented, mysterious, and visually stunning new narratives.
Wong Kar-wei really is the great allegorist of postmodern urban culture. He takes the chaos of the city and turns it into this highly aestheticized art.
His film Chungking Express from '94 is a perfect example. He uses real, recognizable places, like the chaotic Chungking mansions or the Midnight Express food stall.
But he fragments the story, blurring everything together, and it forces you to look at these ordinary urban sites in a new way.
You're seeing this beautiful, dreamlike version of reality, but it's also intensely isolating.
And he took that same feeling of alienation and made it transnational in '97 with Happy Together.
He did. The film is about two Hong Kong lovers who are in Argentina, thousands of miles from home, and they just cannot connect.
That scene where they're dancing the tango in that cold, tiled kitchen.
It says everything. It's about longing, despair, and being completely deterritorialized. It's the feeling of being a Hong Kong citizen at the very moment of the handover.
So if you step back and look at the whole arc, it's really the story of a culture trying to come to terms with its own hyperspeed, constantly changing identity.
It's a profound movement. You go from Bruce Lee's mythical diasporic past to Jackie Chan's deterritorialized global entertainment.
And from genres based on simple morality to these complex hybrid films about duty, loss, and the anxiety of living in a modern city defined by transience.
Exactly.
And here's the final piece that loops it all back to the physical reality of the city, which I just loved. The sources note that because of Hong Kong's high-density living, you know, the famously tiny apartments.
People preferred going out to the cinema. Collective anonymous screenings rather than watching something at home.
And that physical constraint actually dictated how the industry behaved?
It fostered this unique tradition of midnight screenings, and this is the crucial part, an instant feedback loop between the audience and the filmmakers.
So the industry was incredibly responsive, agile, culturally immediate. It wasn't just speed in the production, it was speed in cultural feedback.
The filmmakers knew the mood of the city in real time.
So we'll leave you with the final thought on that. If these specific urban pressures, high density, rapid change, political anxiety, so powerfully shaped Hong Kong cinema, what modern city experiences or anxieties do you think are defining your own culture's cinema today?
And how does that compare to Hong Kong's rapid, feedback-driven model versus, say, the slower script-based development of Hollywood? Think about what the buildings and the streets in your city are saying on screen. Until the next deep dive.